OAuth 2 using Postman by Aditya. Aditya is actually an industry veteran with over 20 plus years of experience. He's in the steering committee of the Agile Testing Alliance. He's also the founding director of QA Agility. He's a test architect, test automation consultant, and the driving force behind ATA. There is so much to speak about Aditya, and I will go on, but I'm sure it's going to cost us a lot of time. But I'm quite curious to learn from him about OAuth 2. OAuth itself is a very tricky authentication problem, and OAuth 2 is something of a nightmare for everybody to kind of use in a day-to-day testing. And it's lovely to see that Aditya is going to actually help us solve this using Postman. And over to you, Aditya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sundar, for calling me veteran. I kind of want to feel young, and daily you guys make me feel so old. Okay, but that's okay. I guys don't believe what Sundar says. Okay, I am young at heart, and I want to basically learn every day, and that's what basically keeps me going. Okay, so here we are. Okay, and Sundar, you are free to add value to this, because I think I'm just trying to make an attempt here to see how I explain this concept here. By the way, first question to you guys. Okay, let me ask you, how many of you are doing API testing today? You can actually raise your hand, or maybe you can just put it on the chat. Yeah, Kshitij is doing. I can see the hand there. Yeah, Krishna is doing.
Yeah, I am doing to some extent.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. 3 out of basically right now 34. Or the other people have probably this is where the problem lies. Okay, the end of the day sessions are the ones basically I have to wake you guys up. That's the reason I'm asking you these simple questions. Okay, you can bring your hands down as well if you can. Okay, second question is that if you are using or doing API testing, how many of you are basically using Postman? Okay. Yeah, Sanada is doing. Yeah, Anand is doing. Rupesh is doing. Hi, Rupesh. Vivek is doing. Yeah, good guys. So at least when I'm going to speak about things, there is some little connection that we can make here, right? By the way, if there's something very basic, or if I am basically going a little overboard, which I will try not to, or if I'm going too basic, you can actually stop me and you can actually ask me that, okay, maybe this is what we already know and you can push ahead. Okay. My intent is to make sure that I can go through something which probably I felt was little new to me, and that is why I'm bringing to you guys. Okay. Are you guys ready for it? Okay. How many of you have done OAuth and OAuth 2, by the way? Anybody who would like to say that yes, they have done OAuth 2? Okay, so I'm assuming that this would be something which probably I'm going to speak and you guys would be new to it. So that means I'm feeling comfortable. Nobody can question me. So that's a positive sign, but yeah, don't worry about it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So with that, let's basically start. I'm going to explain you this entire protocol. This is basically like a protocol itself, OAuth 2, and then I'm going to show you with a case study how do you do it using Postman. Okay. That's me. You can actually connect with me on Twitter, AdiG India, and you can connect with me also on LinkedIn. I'm probably tweeting a lot with reference to today's meetup. Okay. All right. Now, when we talk about an API, this is a simple diagram. I don't think I will take half an hour or more for this particular topic. So guys, I would ask you, what do you understand from this? Okay. Do you see this diagram? Let me bring it back again. Anybody would like to unmute themselves and say that, yes, I understood this diagram and this is what you intend to do?
Try to extract, try to get the response of the data.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, like when client API, yeah, when client API through some of the API tools, when you are sending the request data is going on the when you getting the endpoint through API, the API is further connecting to the database, fetching those details and sending a response back to your client. So here, the request response pairs plays a vital role here.
Right, you're right actually. So look, when we talk about any API, there has to be some form of basically having a request and a response. Okay. Now, when we do this API over the web, it becomes a web service. Okay. So nowadays, if you talk about how many of you basically have tried out Twitter API or Facebook API or even Google API? Anybody has tried?
No, no, Aditya.
No. Yeah. So look, when we talk about Twitter, how many of you have Twitter account, by the way? Or how many of you don't have Twitter account?
I don't have.
Okay, fair enough. So I keep on asking Twitter should pay me royalty for marketing them. Or for example, let's say you have Facebook account, right? Or everybody should have a Facebook, or basically the younger generation have a lot of Instagram account as well, right? Yes.
Yes.
So I do also have, that's why I'm young. Okay, so Sundar, so that actually justifies that I'm not a veteran. Okay, so with that, but have you even thought about saying that, okay, let me not use the UI. Okay, for example, what do you mean by user interface? User interface is basically your the mobile app, or for example, the web interface by which you actually say that, okay, let me post something on the Facebook, or let me post a tweet on Twitter, right? Now, if you were to basically go to the Twitter and using your own account, fetch all the tweets that you have done. You want to analyze all those tweets. Can you do that without the UI? Yes, no? Assumption is obviously,
Yes.
yeah, you should, yeah. So maybe you
Yes.
should look at basically there is an API which Twitter has, there's an API, even for example, if you were to basically say Gmail, right? And you want to basically play with the API that Gmail gives. You'll be surprised that it has an API by which you really don't need a UI kind of a screen. You can create your own design around the Gmail, and you can expose basically a different way of doing things, right? Now here in this case, API is something which is exposing or giving access to the data. Now within API, you will have REST APIs and all those things, and the most popular is REST, and that is where a resource comes into play. What exactly do you want to bring it out, and what exactly do you want to give it back to the client? Okay, so client application is something which is basically the code which is running behind the scene. So for example, it may be a JavaScript application, or basically a Python application, which is basically requesting a data, and basically the response comes back to the client. Okay, this is in simple terms a simple API, right? Everybody okay? The data is something which is lying in the database. It can be somewhere else. It can be a file. It can be something which you want access to. It's an information for you which you want to get access to, right? You can create data. You can actually fetch data. So there are different forms. Like for example, you can have a get or post, or you can update a data. You can delete a data. All these are basically different forms of request that you can do, and the response can be whether you have actually got the data back, or whether the data is updated or not, or whether basically your request has been able to successfully delete the data. All these are part of my request and response. Are you guys okay with this? Should we move ahead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, question to you in this diagram, is this secure?
No, sir.
Why do you think it is not secure?
This is not encrypted actually.
Encrypted is basically, it may be an HTTPS request, so it may be something which there, and most of the time the requests are basically something which are in either JSON form or something like that. It is actually going over HTTPS protocol. Even your web request that you see, your entire HTTP protocol or HTTP protocol, encryption probably does not happen. So it may
I
be
think
something which,
so. Aditya, authentication is not mentioned here.
right. So we are not doing any authentication. People who have access to API, and if the API server doesn't ask you to log in or does not ask you to authenticate yourself, anybody can request this data and play with it. So for example, if I want to basically go and access Google API, and if I know your email address, can I directly go and access it? Probably not.
No.
I should not be allowed, right? but in this diagram there is no authentication, and that is where you have OAuth and OAuth 2. Okay, so for example, in this case, let's assume, and I'm directly jumping into basically something which is the OAuth 2 protocol simplified. Okay, so for example, let's say that the client application has been given an access token. Now I'll talk to this particular concept, that what is access token and who actually gives an access token to the client. Access token is a mechanism by which the client has been now given access to the server, which means that yes, you're allowed, you are basically having permissions to access the data. Now this access token, if the client application has, with every request that it sends to the server using the API, it actually encapsulates in the header or in the parameter somewhere an access token. So the API call that the client application is making is in combination of something which is called as an access token. Think like basically if you are boarding a train, you have a ticket, and if the TT comes, show me your ticket, you say, look, this I have boarded this train because I have token, or basically I have ticket. That's what you can think as of now. Does it make sense? So what happens is, if the request has access token embedded in the request, the API actually verifies whether this access token is correct or not. Okay, and if it is correct, it passes back the data. Okay, now this is basically in very simple form. You can assume that this is extremely simple way of explaining you OAuth 2. Okay, now people will kill me if I say this is OAuth 2. This is not exactly OAuth 2, but for simply understanding it, let's say that the client application is given access token in advance, and only those applications which have access token would be given the data, otherwise they will not. Okay, does it make sense? All of you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Questions here? So I'm assuming that you understand the concept that access token is being given to the client application. Now the question is, how does client application get access to access token? How is this access token generated, or how is this access token given to the client application? So that is where we separate out this entire responsibility to something called as an authorization server. Its job is only to give authentication, or its job is only to give access to. So let's say the client application requests an access token from the authorization server. Okay, authorization server says to the end user, can you basically confirm whether this client application which is requesting this access token is allowed to do it or not? If the end user says yes, the authentication server basically gives the token. Okay, have you seen something like this in your real life?
Yeah,
Anybody can give me an example, or you would definitely have seen it. Maybe you are not realizing. I'm just going to give an example, and then you will basically be able to connect.
Maybe yeah. This we can say it.
How? Can you give me an example?
We enter our office premises with our access card, so it's a kind of access token.
No. Okay. So my request here would be, let's yeah. So you have an access code which was given to you. So I am talking about who gave you the access card. In that case, the HR department actually verified your credentials. When you joined, they checked all your things. Maybe they did take a background check, and then they issued you a card. Okay, that is what is authorization server. The HR department is the one who is responsible to you, responsible for giving you the access card. Once you have access card, then it is the last slide where you can actually go inside the system and do whatever you want. You can enter the premises, right? Now are you understanding? Is it clear?
Yes.
Now,
Yes,
this thing, why I am asking you is, this you have actually experienced in your software, in your real IT world, somewhere or the other. I just want to make you think little more. I want to give you 1 or 2 minutes to think that, is there something like this I am doing? Am I the one who is giving permissions for something?
Yeah, like Aditya, like we have in the same kind of scenarios. So we have a client and server application somewhere. So they say that they will share a SSL certificate as a security certificate. They ask us to install in the particular key stores to access the particular server. So there is authentication is established between when we connect to the server. So they give, so we use in our normal IT industry, some places in testing of API.
Yeah, absolutely right. That is one of those examples. Maybe it is specific to getting access to an application by getting something like that. But let me come back. Okay, so how many of you have seen that? Do you see a screen where people say that you are logging into, for example, say Facebook, and Facebook says you can use Gmail to log in? Or for example, you are trying to create an account on Instagram, and Instagram says, okay, you don't need any login and password. If you have Gmail account or Google Plus account, you're allowed to log in. And then if you say Google Plus, you are basically logging into your Google account and then you give permission. Have you seen something like that?
Yeah, this is kind of single sign-on. So once your credentials are there, then they allow you to log in with the other
So
credentials.
let's say I don't know whether I have Facebook logged in on my Edge or not. So here they are not showing me something which is there. Anything else which you think like an application which says that you can actually use Google or something like that? Any other example?
Yeah, Aditya, I think we will be using the Book My Show for a ticket booking portal.
Yes.
So
yes.
there we can use Google to sign in instead of getting a Book My Show account. So
Correct.
So it uses the basic OAuth and it will redirect to the Book My Show once after login.
Yeah, you're right. But let's look even at Instagram. It says login with Facebook. Maybe they are the parent company. They don't want to basically give something else. But if you have a Facebook account, it's a different application. You can still log into your Instagram account, right? And similarly, there are tons of other applications which you would give access to and you would have to log in. So suppose if I say if I want to log in, I will have to basically log into Facebook and then only enter. If I give my login credentials.
Adi, sorry for interruption, but I think, are you sharing something else? Because we can see only the PPT, your entire screen is not shared.
1 second, let me just share the screen properly again. Give me a second. I was trying to show you the Edge.
Yeah, because we could only see the PPT.
Can you see the Edge now?
Yes, it's visible now.
Yeah. So this is what I was showing you, that look, in Instagram, you can say login with Facebook, correct? And then if I log into Facebook, it's basically taking me to the Facebook login page, and I can enter my email address or my Facebook login ID and password, and if I log in, it will give access to my Instagram account. Okay, or it will create an account for me there. Okay, they are connected. Okay, similarly for Book My Show, if I want to sign in, let's say I'm searching for Mumbai, and if I say sign in, look. So it says continue with Google, continue with Facebook. How does it actually happen, and what exactly is happening here? Have you used something like this before? Anybody?
Yes, sir. There might be like some GitHub account can be also utilized on different websites also.
Correct. So what is happening is here, the authorization server is basically your, like for example, if you are logging into your GitHub and you are basically your GitHub account and you're using Gmail to log in, your authorization server is your Gmail. Okay. So when, let's say the client application is GitHub, from GitHub or for example, Book My Show, you say, okay, I want to log in, and the authentication is happening through the client application. It actually calls an API, which is at the back end, your Gmail API, and it actually authenticates basically the user credentials, permission given, and then it gives the token back. And once it has the token, then everything basically is following the route. So now I can do whatever I want in my GitHub account, provided my login criteria and all those things are happening through an authorization server, which is basically a third-party authorization server. I just wanted to give you an example like that. Okay. And that is what is happening in your API case as well. For example, if I'm doing a Twitter application or Twitter development, it would ask me for a developer account and it would say which application you are creating. Can you basically create an application credentials? Once I give the application credentials, then I am given basically client ID and client secret, and that is what is being used to request access token. And then I can play with it. I'll show you shortly. Okay, but does it make sense? So what is happening is that your authorization server is basically separated out. It can be part of the same application which is at the backend, or it can be another one which is only worried about authorizing and giving access token. And in this case, this access token verification is happening through this authorization server as well. And this is what is happening for your Google Plus sign-in. Okay, I want you to, rather than me reading out, is it legible? Can you guys read? And I want you to read this 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. So the idea is what a lot of applications basically, when they are developing it, it becomes easier. So for example, especially in a mobile app, and that is where if you're on Android, they would try to force you, or they would like, and people, it is simpler because if you've already logged into your Gmail account, and when you say, okay, can you basically give me access, you don't have to basically create another login. You don't have to create another password, and you tend to forget. You know that if my Gmail account is working fine, I can access this account. Okay, it has got its both advantages and disadvantages, which is where you are giving permissions for some other third-party app to your account, and how many permissions it asks and how many permissions do you give is what you have to be very careful about. Okay, so OAuth is also about basically, one is access token, and access token comes with what permissions you are giving to the data that is there within Google and somewhere else. Okay, does it make sense? Any confusion so far?
Yes.
Let me just show you.
Like one question I was asking. Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
Hello, can you?
Yeah.
Like so this coming back to the authentication server.
Yeah.
So I have one Facebook account, I have Google account, I have LinkedIn account, or any other accounts.
Yeah.
So like when I'm like signing, so like I can use any this one. So this, how this authentication is happening internally, how it is understanding.
We will just show you. Yeah, that is what is OAuth 2, and I'm going to take you through that exercise right now. Okay.
Thanks, Adi.
Yeah. This is exactly what. See, by the way, I am going to share some URLs in my PPT. I will anyways basically share. This recording is also happening. So I would say, and all the community, testing community, should really experiment with the Google API, for example. Okay, that's one thing that I want to do. Okay, and I will share this particular URL on the chat. Make sure that you guys can look at it and see if you can try it out. Okay, so for example, it has got something called as Google API console. Okay, when you go there, it is also having something which is more on to do with that. Can you play with it? Okay, so for example, I will say OAuth playground. Okay, these are something which I will share, and once my session is done, my request would be to play with it. Okay, because I don't want to give a demo with it. It will basically require me to do too many things. It requires domain and all. So this is something, a playground that it is here. I'm going to take a different case study shortly. Okay. So if you look at this playground, it has got basically select and authorize APIs. Okay, let's say I want to play with my, look at basically how these 3 steps are there. There are 3 steps. Step 1, you authorize the API. So let's say I'm going to look at my Gmail API. Okay, and I would say mail.google.com. Okay, authorize API. So I gave permissions. But when I'm giving permission, it is asking me to basically confirm this. Look, this is where the authorization happens, where you are giving access to your own account. So I'm saying that, okay, please do this. Okay, allow. So once I allow, the next one is basically exchange. This is the step 2. Once the authorization happens, then we exchange. This is the authorization code. So authorization code is only provided once basically the user confirms and says, look, this is the permission I am giving and this is what is done. I will exchange code for tokens. So now once I have the token, it has got 2 parts to the token. Okay, so one is basically a refresh token. Another one is called as access token. Why there is a refresh token, and this is specifically on OAuth 2, the main reason is that if your access token expires, you just need your refresh token to get a new access token. And then you can play with the third step. If I want to see list of possible operations, okay, I can say create a new draft. Okay, and then I would send the request, it probably would. So I have to basically, when I say, so we'll have to look what is the API. It has to say user ID, and I have to supply the user ID. Maybe I will have to do something else here, so which is simpler. Yeah. Yeah, but see again, since I'm not doing a Postman so far, I'll go show you because I have not gone through all the APIs here. But there are 3 steps involved, and I will show you quickly how to play with those 3 steps. One is simple, that you basically first authorize. Second is that you basically get the token. And then third is basically you will actually use this token for every request. That is for sure. OK, so this is the token being used here. Authorization, and the token is given bearer, and this is the token ID. If you look at it, this is your token YA29 something. This entire stuff is the token. OK, now this is just a playground. I think I've shared that. You guys need to just, and this is just an OAuth2 playground with a Google API, just to make you understand that what are the 3 steps involved. OK, do you get the basic idea right now?
Yes, Aditya, this access token, how long the session will expire, Aditya? Like, so
yeah,
before
so every
the
application, yeah, default is some 3 something seconds is there. Okay, the access token will expire. I think 3600 second is the default value which the RFC defines. Okay, so which is equivalent to how much? If I say Calci 3600 second is how much? 3600 divided by 60.
60 minutes.
This is 60 minutes. So this is where the access token would be there. So if I want to get a new one, then I will say exchange authorization. So refresh access token. After 60 minutes, if it doesn't work, I just need to say refresh access token, and this will get refreshed. OK. And that's OAuth2 for you, because that makes it easier. And the protocol is simple. It can be given on the web, and the entire stuff is basically REST enabled. So all that is simpler to do. OK. So does it make sense?
Yes, yes. Thanks, Aditya. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So this is how it is. This is where I said that authorization server in this case is your Google Plus, for example. OK. It can be something else as well. And this entire OAuth2, this is taken from a standard called RFC 6749. OK. The standard has too many things. It becomes complicated. I'm just trying to simplify some of the basic stuff here. OK. This is where your RFC is. OK. I'm going to share this URL as well. This has the entire OAuth2 described. OK, it has got whatever I'm talking about. This is the flow that you have, and it says what is the request response going to be. And this is where the refresh token they're talking about. So normally, most of the RFC implementation has basically an access token and refresh token given. I'll show that in the diagram as well. I have brought this in the slide as well. Let me just show it to you. Okay. Is that this is something which is one of the biggest difference between OAuth 1 and 2, that OAuth 2 comes with something which is called as a refresh token. OK, and whenever the access token expires, refresh token, this is the request. Look at the G number. If you basically pass on get me another access token, you have to pass the refresh token, and you will be given back a new refresh token if you want, and an access token with it. OK, now. Generally, there are 3 steps, as I said, and I showed you in that playground that we have for Google. Step 1, you register your application and get the necessary credentials. Step 2 basically is authorization. This step was missing in the Google playground, because we directly, without an application, we access the authorization point, and we got an authorization code. Once we get an authorization code, we actually go to and get an access token. So normally the first step is basically you register your application and get something very important called as client ID and client secret. And the second step is basically send an authorization endpoint. You will get an authorization code like the one that I just showed you on your Google here. So this is where you get an authorization code. And once you have the authorization code, the next step is simple. Next step is basically you have to get your access token. Now, all of this I am going to explain to you in an application which is called as imager.com. Okay, so let me just go to that website. So I have created my own account. Okay, and if I'll just quickly show you, I have registered one application as well, but I'm not going to use this application. I will show you from scratch that how do you basically, for this case study to work, you will have to create a login account at imager.com. Okay, and let me log out. Let me just show you. So if I want to sign in, look, it also says that you can sign in. So it can also internally use OAuth 2 to log in into something else. So we are trying to use Imager API for our own benefit here. Okay. So I just signed in and I have basically something which is giving me about my settings. Okay. And I'll just show you something else here quickly. Okay. So they have an API. And it says getting started. It says that you have to register your application. You will be given a client ID and client secret. And then once you register your application, you will be given basically you have to copy this. Normally there are two requests. This is basically auth request. And then you have a token request. Both of this has to be passed to Postman as well. OK, now let's do one thing. I will just show you how do you create or add a client there. OK. So let's say this is a virtual meet ATA virtual meet demo. So I'm trying to create an application. Remember the client application, which is trying to access basically the API. So in this case, I'm saying my application name is ATA virtual demo, and it is using OAuth 2 authorization with a callback URL. And this callback URL, that is where it comes in handy, is your Postman tool. So when we talk about using OAuth testing, using Postman, Postman has a built-in feature. So if I were to create a new request, okay, and one second, let me just create a new request inside this particular collection that I have. Okay, create a request, demo request. Okay, and let me move to the top here. So if you look at it, there is no other request open, and here in case of your Postman, you have got something called as auth. Inside auth, there are different type of authentication there are available. The one that we are using is OAuth 2, and then we will say, can you please get me a new access token? Okay, here I am using, this is because I tried it yesterday night. Let me call that token name is something which is basically a demo IMAUGR app. Okay, and grant type is basically authorization code, and this is the callback URL. If I click this is the callback URL I'm going to use. Okay, guys, stop me if basically it is getting little complex here. Okay, so far so good. Are you with me?
Aditya, one question I have.
Yes. Yeah.
Why it is auth 2.0?
Right, so there are different authentication. So look at the way that security is evolved. So first security was basically only on giving username and password, okay, to the API, and it will basically give you back a token and you can use it. It was a basic authentication. OAuth 1, which the Twitter used for a long time, it is still using. It is basically not having a refresh token, and it has got little more complexities involved. OAuth 2 is a standard which is now getting popular. Most of the APIs are using it. It has got little more ease for doing things. Plus, it is allowing basically the things to be exchanged over a web. So that is where OAuth 2 has taken the center stage. Most of the APIs that are being implemented for access, especially for giving public access, are using OAuth 2. Okay, so since we are experimenting with OAuth 2, yeah, and Imager API is the one which we are using. We are saying OAuth 2 authorization with a callback URL. Okay, that is what we are trying to do. We selected OAuth 2 here. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, thanks, Aditya.
Yeah. So I'll say get new access token. And in this case, I have given say demo imager app and authorization code is what I am selecting. And then this is the callback URL that will be required. So I will go back here and I will basically post it here. OK, application website. So normally you would do it when you are doing a development, you would have your own website and all those things. Since we are doing on the testing side, we don't have a website of our own. We may use basically the Postman itself. These are not mandatory fields. OK, these are optionals. OK, and I would say I am not a robo. OK, and I will submit. So at this moment, it says that you have been given two important things, the client ID and client secret. OK, these are basically something which are important in OAuth 2. OK, so let me note them down. So when I am trying to register my application on Imager, I have been given two things, client secret, which is this one, and I have been given a client ID. OK, this is the client ID. Now, these are the things which are passed on or which are required in your API calls. So in this case, the auth URL that your Imager API says, this is basically your authorize. This is the one. Authorize. So we will pass that into my Postman since I tried it yesterday, it is auto populating. And this is my token API, which is basically the second call. So it happens automatically one after the other. OK, this is my token API. Both of them basically are done one after the other. And the client ID that I just got is this one. And my client secret is this one. Okay, scope in this case is not defined, but many APIs you can define the scope, that how much you want. So for example, if I am defining an API and there are different functionalities to do, like for example in Gmail API, it will say that read write access or only read access, right? In this case, the scope is in the Imager API. There is no scope separately defined. State is important because that's a value preventing for cross-site scripting. So when you are basically sending a request, the response comes and the response also has this thing involved, which is only in the response. And if the state is different, it will not basically accept it. So somebody who is the man in the middle attack may not be able to test it properly. So that's why the state is important. OK, and client authentication, we will say send as basic auth header and I will request token. So look, this is actually going to Imager. This is where just like your Gmail, I'll have to say you are currently logged in as ADG India. If I was not logged in, it would ask me to log in. I will have to allow it. Once it allows, it actually gives a call back to Postman. That was the callback URL. And then the authentication gets completed and then we get the access token. OK, let me just copy it one by one. This is the access token that I've got. And it also gave me something which is the request refresh token. So at any given point, if my access token expires, I can use this as well. OK, and then account ID, and this is basically sometimes it is required, sometimes it is not. In some requests, it asks you to submit those as well. So I might have to use them. OK, that is how the entire stuff is there. And in your Postman, you can say that I want to use that. So now available tokens that if you see is what I have. So if I go and check my managed tokens, this is the one which I created yesterday. This is the one which I created just now. OK, so let me delete the one that I have yesterday and I will use this token. So now if you look at it, there is another API which is basically, let me show you to this particular API call that we have in my account. Get images. So it says HTTPS API. This is basically a GET request. We may have to use basically am I using this one? It also uses the header, which is saying authorization bearer token, and it is this is the API call that I'm using. Okay, so even if I were to not use the existing call, let me create another one, add a new request. Okay, here I will say this is my request. In my header, in fact, if I can use this particular here, so it available token that I have is this one. This automatically gets into my header. So it says authorization bearer, this one. So this is my access token that I am using. If I do this and I'm using access token and header prefix bearer, this request is there, and now header information has authorization and value is my access token. And if I send this request, that's how basically I will be able to get the data back. So every request that I want to make it to imager.api calls, this will give me entire stuff. So if I want to now, this is the image that I have got. And this I accessed it from the API. And if I want to basically go to my Imager account, sorry, my net is slow down, or maybe my machine because I have opened so many things. Oh, I am using something else here. What is the by the way, did you follow what I did? Yes, no? Or did I lose you guys? Look, these are the various images that I have here. And I was able to access using Postman. Yeah, all these. In fact, all these details that I have is available in my Postman here. So this is the entire library that I get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the images are there. So questions, guys? Anything that you want to ask at this moment?
Yeah, Adi,
yeah,
Kshitij here. So
yeah,
pretty great that you showed this. One thing just still striking me is, how would the refresh token be taken care from the Postman? I do understand that there was a refresh token shared back.
Yeah, so there is a request which is called as generate access token. Okay, I'll just show you. So here in this case, the first thing that it is saying is generate access token. It takes basically the refresh token. It takes the client ID, it takes the client secret and the grant type, which is refresh token. This is basically a hard-coded value. These are parameterized. Okay, so refresh token will have to supply, client ID will have to supply, client secret will have to supply, and refresh token. So then the token gets refreshed. Okay, so for example here, this is where if I say generate access token, okay, in this case, refresh token, I will have to use the one that I just generated. Okay. Client ID is the one which I have. Basically, the client ID is this one. And client secret is this one. And authentication has to be basically this one. Okay, because we have to use the correct authentication that we have. And body and just say send.
Correct. So basically, you'll be actually calling the particular API to refresh your token before making any calls to your collection APIs, right?
Yeah, correct. So now I have got a new access token and it says expires in this month. So it also tells me how long will it be before it expires. So these are the new values that we will have to use.
Basically, two-factor authentication.
Yeah, you can say actually two-factor in the sense it is actually not really two-factor. because we are just giving one time access to it. So it is just that there are two requests going. One is that you get an authorization stuff and then the access token is there. So it is basically making sure that your API calls are secure. So this access token that I showed you earlier, okay, look at this diagram that I showed you. So the whole process is how do you get this access token? Okay, once you have this access token, then you're all set. So OAuth 2 is basically all about two things. One is obviously with reference to how do you generate your access token. So there are two API calls. So in the RFC literature as well, the two API calls that we used when we basically use this one, and if I say get new access token, this is an authorization call which has got a callback URL which will go to the client API. The callback would happen, and that is where you, the end user, will give permissions to it. So that is where the actual authentication happened. Okay, this diagram that we are doing is all about the authorization server. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not really two-factor authentication. It is a simple permission, but once it is given and you have the access token, then you can play with that entire API. And this is an expiry. And once you have an expiry, you have a refresh token. As simple as that. Okay.
What I thought was like generating the token once in a while or beyond the time. So I thought it's a two-factor authentication.
Correct. So refresh token in that case is like a two-factor in that case. So it expires. So you'll have to get it back again. That's how it is. But it's just to make sure that the session continues. Okay.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. So I think that's what I have. I can quickly, yeah, maybe I can, if I have something else. Yeah. If you have any questions, probably you can ask me. Otherwise, I'm kind of done. And I hope that I could actually explain. It is a little more complicated and it has got multiple steps. So I tried to simplify it because if there is a video as well, and if you search on that video, you will probably understand it better now. So if you allow me, I can play as well. Okay, do you want me to do that? Okay, just hang in there. I'm going to play this video. Okay. So app is where we created an app. It says that can you basically give me an authorization endpoint? It goes back to the user with a login ID password. It just asks. So app displays an authorization page to the user. User says yes. And then basically it gets that authorization code. Once the authorization code is available, it basically gets an access token. Once the access token is available, then the web APIs can be called, and that is where the resources and all those is accessible. Okay. And that is given the resource, and the resource can be passed back to the client. Okay. So if you look at this diagram, it becomes very complicated for the first time when you see it. Okay. And that is something which is easily accessible on YouTube. What I just did, I just downloaded it. It is from authlead.com. Okay. If you guys want to try it out, maybe you probably do. But I think after this session, I am sure that you will understand a little bit more on what is OAuth 2 and can you experiment with it. So the application that I found handy was this application. There are others as well. Maybe one day if you can try it on Google API, I will also try. And if I can do a demo on Google API, then I would love to do that. Okay. So any more questions? Otherwise, probably I don't know whether it this session went a little overboard or not. I tried to simplify. I'm so sorry. This is, by the way, part of the program which is called a Certified Professional Web Services Testing. That is the only program which is on web services today. It covers 3 tools, which is Postman, Rest Assured, and Karate. Very powerful program, hands-on completely on Postman. You will go to very nitty-gritties of that and complete details on Rest Assured and even Karate as well. So if you really want to learn or basically, yeah, go ahead.
Aditya, one Gopal here. One question, Aditya.
Yeah.
So in Postman or API automation, what are the key challenges? What are the things you might have faced and any inputs to us? Like what kind of key challenges when we start the API automation? How to overcome those challenges?
Yeah.
That will be really great.
Yeah, Postman as a tool is simple. So when you are doing it for the first time, get, post, and all those things are simple. Okay, I don't think there is any challenge there. Okay, as long as you understand the endpoint. So the one thing is that you should understand what is the API, what is the method behind it, whether it is post, put, whether it is delete or get. These are the 4 major ones. And what is basically the payload, what exactly goes in the body what is in the header. If you understand the documentation part of API, putting it in the Postman is simple enough. But then goes the next point. The next point is little more tougher, because what happens is many a times your API is into a call chain. What is a call chain? Like for example, in your web application, you do login first. Only when you log in, you can do the rest of the part. So similarly in API, you will do X, and the output of X is consumed by the next API. And the output of that API is consumed by the next one. So you have to create a call chaining, and that is where the challenge starts. That is where you have to learn a little more JavaScripting, and that is where you actually start supplying this JavaScript inside the test here. So a lot of these tests that you generate are having some tests here. Maybe this one has, yeah. So you would basically create some variables, you can store those variables, all of those testing you can actually do. Because if I don't have proper access token and if I don't have proper refresh tokens, the next stuff will be hard coded. So no cut paste required. This actually will be going into my variables. All that is the challenging part. So little JavaScripting is important. The tests have to be written here. And if your test passes, that is where your request passes. Otherwise, and you will have to check basically the response code. You might have to also check what is the response times, the payload itself, the response, what exactly, if it is in the proper format or not. You can actually look at what is basically the JSON structure there. What is the key value pair? So the challenge is that most of the time when we talk about REST API testing, you will have to understand a little bit of JSON and a little bit of JavaScripting to make sure that you go to the next level of testing in Postman.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. Like sometimes they say Swagger APIs or Swagger and some kind of new technology they say. So they all come under same thing.
API testing documentation when developers do, especially in Spring Boot and all, it comes with something called as Swagger documentation. That is still manual to me, because what happens is that Swagger API documentation, there is a web page available. It says that how do you basically supply values to it, and it gives you values back. So Swagger is just a first cut unit testing. According to me, Swagger is just pure unit testing tool, which is inbuilt most of the time with a Spring Boot kind of an application. Okay. If you want to go a little more deeper into automation, you would have to use some tools like Postman, or if you are comfortable in something like Java or in C#, there is Rest Sharp and Rest Assured. Okay, these are the two which are there. If you are familiar with little more on the Cucumber BDD side, Karate is the tool. Karate is very powerful, by the way, and very simple to learn.
Oh, thanks. So Swagger, the definition files also we can import into Postman, Aditya?
Yes, yes, you can.
Thanks, Aditya. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, with Swagger documentation, you'll not be able to get the actual test data. So that is again a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aditya, Basavaraj here.
Yeah,
I don't have any questions, but must say you are an amazing speaker. You know, you pick up any technical topic and you just amazing energy levels. That, at least that is not my cup of tea, but yeah, it was
Thank
good
you,
session.
Basavaraj. Your session was actually equally very interesting and intriguing, and you actually engaged people a lot. So we can keep patting our back. I think this is just because of the community. See, I normally don't speak in my own conferences and on my meetups. Normally I don't. Okay, unless and until I see there is a lack of speaker, then I go and basically say, okay, let me take this topic. So the whole advantage of speaking is that you actually have to do a lot of research. So when I do a presentation, believe me guys, that I would have worked 4 or 5 hours yesterday to put this presentation together, to see everything is working fine. And how can I understand before I make you understand? So I may be wrong. Maybe I will, next time when I do the presentation, you will see that I don't do the same presentation. I will improvise on that. Okay. And that is where the best part about these meetups are, because it allows you to basically learn more. And I'm sure that I would request whoever is present right now to step up and say, yes, I would like to speak up. And this is if you wouldn't believe, guys, this is actually better than any conference, because in 4 hours, you basically get to learn so many things. And obviously through the community, it is open. You do network with folks. And if you start speaking in some meetups like this, I'm sure that you will learn a lot. So we welcome everybody. By the way, GTR is like that as well. I think one of the person was tweeting a lot. He would be the winner. Probably we will announce the winner after this meetup is done. But I really appreciate that there were so many folks who stayed back. I think there are 30 odd people who stayed back. Great. Thank you so much for motivating all of us.
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, that video you showed at the end.
Yeah.
If it is on the first video, then we do not understand that what to the authentication type. Yeah. A video is complicated.
Yeah. So when I saw it for the first time, I actually happened to go through the same feeling, and that is where I started researching, and that is where I thought that maybe rather than reading, if I can actually experiment with it and then see how it goes, that is how I picked it up, guys. Okay.
It was very simple. When you made it very simple, I mean, even 5 hours spending on that video will not help. I think. Thanks.
No,
thanks for that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Sundar, all yours. I'll probably unshare the screen and you can take it ahead.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Aditya, for simplifying OAuth 2. It was something of a nightmare for most of us, especially when you have to pass on different tokens to get the final token. Yeah, and the IAMGuru example is something that I'm sure everyone would like to try as well. But the ultimate hats off goes to the one who actually uses the Twitter API to automate. So having said that, thanks again, and I would like to thank everybody who actually spent the last 4 hours learning with us, joining us at the ATA virtual meetup 4. Please do give us your feedback. Also, you can write about this meetup on LinkedIn, and we'll make it a point to actually reshare it and promote it. And it actually benefits all of us because when you share knowledge, you're not just learning for yourself, but you're also kind of educating a lot of folks as well. So we are always up for helping folks to promote their blogs through our ATA group on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So yeah, do write up and let us know once you write up. And I'm sure we will share this recording sometime later once we have the recording filtered out and broken down into chunks and posted in YouTube. So having said that, thanks again. Thanks everyone for joining in, and thanks a lot to all the speakers, Sanjay, Akshaya, Sushovan, Basuraj, and Aditya for giving us a wonderful Saturday with all your enriching talks.
So can I just intervene and just say a few things, Sundar?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Guys, this meetup would have not been possible without the active support of the community which is behind it, and there is a lot of people from the Mumbai, Bangalore, and the Pune one which are there. Like I can see Ganesh is there, Deepthi was there earlier, Jyoti is here, and obviously Sundar, who was the host. A big round of applause for all of them, guys. I think that is where this is all about you guys. If you can also applaud, guys, that would be really nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, and we actually have finished on time, 4 hours.
Yeah, great. 10 minutes before that. That's great, guys.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I give
Cheers.
100% quality to the virtual meet.
Great. Cheers.
Yeah.
So come back again and please post it on LinkedIn and say that you really liked it, because I think we are lacking in our marketing initiatives. So if you can help us reach out to the larger audience, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks again, and meet you all next time.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.